Okay, Sunday, December 18, 2016. I'm going to start off with an opinion. Hey, an opinion. Follow me on this one. For any of you that have played cards, spades, whist, gin, I'll say bridge. I don't know how to play bridge, but follow me on this one. So, and as you know, I voted for a third party. So, I'm just calling it how I see it, kind of thing. All right. So the POTUS basically surrounds him by, um, we'll say, they're not moderates. Okay. Early on, over the summer, I basically compared Trump to Nixon. So I went back into 1968 for the election, and what happened immediately. Basically, the bear market started before Nixon was even in his inauguration. Okay. So this is what I have. Right now, the embassy is in Tel Aviv, Israel. Okay. And he wants to move it to Jerusalem. Now, most other countries, because of this 1967 war and that afterwards, they basically just leave them in. They don't recognize Jerusalem. Okay. That's just a soft way of kind of protesting. All right. Now, in 1973, when there was another war, okay, this time it was started, I believe, with Egypt and Syria, okay, America supported Israel, and we had our first OPEC shock. OPEC at that time closed off the spigot. We actually had to wait in line to get fuel in that. In America in the late 60s, I believe we were pretty well self-sufficient. I think we were still exporting oil at the time. We picked up on the oil drilling in that in the late 50s, and it carried on until the 60s, and then we started importing oil because it was cheaper. The dollar was strong, hint, hint. The dollar was strong. It was cheaper for us to import the oil than it was to dig a hole in the ground, okay? Currently, we have everything set up for fracking and things of that nature. Canada, we get 40% of our oil from. But follow me on this one. Say, for example, they moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Okay, that will upset some folks. Okay, now, follow me on this one. Okay. Say, for example, we have the same type of deal where Saudi Arabia, or you just start naming some countries, begin to tighten the spigot. Okay, it'll basically affect Europe more than the United States. Okay, but if that should happen, lo and behold, we're buddy with Russia, right? So now the tankers come the other direction. Okay, so. But it's that shock to the system, like I said, 95% of the world is overseas, okay, for earnings and that. The Donald wants to make America great again. Well, that period after World War II, of course, he can be really great when you flattened Germany and Japan into submission for 20 years. Okay. And then we saw with what happened when Japan was back and running, they did a number to our industry. Okay. Our car market. So what I'm getting at is that even though history, it's not the same, it may rhyme. Okay. Now, I'm not a tinfoil guy. I don't hoard metals. If silver gets back to $5 an ounce, I'll be hoarding silver again. It has a propensity of doing that. But what I'm looking for is that it's not that. It's kind of like driving. Okay, I don't worry about myself. I worry about the other guy. Okay, so Donald's kind of surrounded himself by non-moderates, and they're basic. One guy's called Bulldog. So it's not that I'm shaking the tree, but the deal is that there's the possibility that some aggressive moves aren't taken kindly with the rest of the world. Okay, so it's just one of those things you put in the back of the head. What would happen if Saudi Arabia got excited? Okay, or you just start naming some other countries that, the deal is right now you have factions fighting each other. We'll call it like Ireland, the Catholics and the Protestants. They're both Irish, but yet all of a sudden we become buddy with, with Russia, which, prior to the SARS, okay, being murdered, that I think things were on a decent footing, but a lot of World War II was to try and keep that Russia from that type of extremism that was going on over there to expanding across Europe, the communists and things of that nature. Okay, and these are all business people, right? So what's good for business? Now, I'm not saying, I'm not, putting on the tinfoil hat or whatever, but it's one of these things that it's like, you look at a cabinet and you're like, okay, how would this narrative work out? And it's like, okay, what happens if this happens? So we already saw that Trump, when he called Taiwan, that's off the historic norm of what when we call Taiwan first, or we call China first before we call Taiwan. We notify them that we'll be contacting them, okay? He didn't do that. We also have the incident with the underwater drone. Now, if you remember, go back, you can Google this, go back to Chinese takedown of U.S. plane back in, I think it was April of 2001. An American, we'll call it a reconnaissance type plane, was hit midair by another, as it was put in the paper, a hotshot Chinese pilot. And the plane was downed. And then the plane was dismantled and sent back to us in parts. But while America was looking over its left shoulder at China in April of 2001. September 2001 came around, and we know what happened there. Now, I'm not saying there's any causation or, correlation type deal, but it's that kind of thing again. I always look at the marketplace as a magician, the whole sleight of hand. You're watching one thing and then something's going on with the other hand. So we go back to China. I talked about 95% of the world is over there. Coca-Cola gets 80% of their profits overseas. McDonald's, I think 74%, DuPont, because 95% of the planet's over there. All right. If by chance, some of these trade deals, these are long-term, decade-long contracts, things like NAFTA and that. It benefits, it's the offshoring, okay? So products are cheaper. So the underpaid labor in the United States can afford them, okay? So when we now have a strong dollar, it means that America is going to go and buy a lot more imports. So it doesn't really work in today's world to bring plants back so we can make socks and underwear and marbles in the United States. America is 19% of the world GDP. We ship out movies and airplanes and foodstuffs, and I think there are like 9 Honda manufacturers in the United States. The number one imported car in Japan is an American-made Honda kind of thing. So there isn't a problem out there. We're making them, okay? If you just leave things alone, the cycles and everything will work out just fine. But if you tinker with something, you're gonna get this reaction, and USA cannot go through bankruptcy court, okay, and then Shazam, another IPO, and I have money to buy more buildings, and I'm a great guy. My problem is that other people might believe him, and then we run into we escalate things that weren't there in the first place. Okay, so getting back to China. So China had a speculation run back in 2015. Okay. Um, for those of you long-termers that have been following me know that, you know, this was a good sell. Okay, so we've come down here with China. This pattern, I'm basically looking at it as a uh, uh, as more of a corrective type pattern, and then yet it's rolling over here. Okay, that's China. Now, if we break ties with trade, okay, Japan's number one trading partner. If we kind of monkey that up, okay, China, I believe, was not involved with the TPP. Okay, that's a separate deal. Okay, if we monkey with this stuff and we become isolationists like we were prior to World War One, okay, you run into problems. Your Walmart cannot import all the, like we used to call it, from Japan after World War II crap. Okay, and then you have other things too. Think about Apple selling their goods in Asia. Okay, so this can cause a lot of issues. Becoming an isolationist, you need the free trade. You need that's how it works. You know, not every country is a banana republic for us. Okay, we don't send down our cruisers and battleships and scare people anymore, you know. But the deal is this is just some of those things you put in the back of your mind, you know, as we go forward here, because basically it's not on the charts. The charts are pointing in one direction, but it's this picking a fight kind of thing, and you're surrounded by people who are not moderates, and you can escalate things and get it out of control. How we got out of the Great Depression, we were still rolling in the Great Depression in the United States, as we had World War II, and we found out then, like we did after World War I, is it's great for business. Now, America always assumes that it's an island over here, right? Basically, surrounded by, you know, couple of oceans here. And but if some of you remember World War II, the Japanese sent bombs over on balloons, and it caught the trade winds. They landed mostly in Canada. Some did land in, I think, the Washington, Oregon, up in that area. And some of you also remember that there was some news a couple of years back that someone off the coast of California thought they saw a missile in the air, and we pointed it at the Chinese. So the deal is that, you know, we play our games and they play their games, but occasionally stuff gets out of control, and that's what I worry about. You know, if you just leave stuff alone, laissez-faire, everything will adjust. All the markets will correct. All, you know, things of that nature. But if we go around shaking trees and stuff, it's not, you know, think of it this way. Donald sold whatever stock he owned in the summertime, so he really wouldn't care about the stock market. The only thing that Donald would really care about is if interest rates went up, then his real estate. You know, people who have ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, they're in for a shock. You know, and so it's one of these things that we go from, you know, euphoria, which we saw with the put-call ratio, and then we go the other way. But this is just my opinion. You know, I can say happy things, but it's one of these where all of a sudden you sit there and you're dealt your cards, you know, Trump's cabinet. How does this play out? You know, in psychology, they basically say that people are in it for themselves. Okay, so everyone has an agenda, and you know, I want the best for everybody, but it's kind of like the whole bully thing, you know. So, but that's, you know, that's here nor there. But it's just a word of caution going forward here. So if by chance we run into issues with China, okay, remember they're working on a strong middle class. At one number I read a couple years ago, they were putting 25,000 new cars on the road. So would China need us? Well, at one time, China really did need us. But then all of a sudden, if you're self-sufficient at home, okay, you might not need the Americans. Remember, China is, we'll say, a quarter of the world's, or it's less than that. But you know what I'm saying. If America looks at it as 95% of the world is over there, they look at us. Okay, so it might not be pretty, because you start off with trade wars that screws up corporations. They'll get upset. Then of course it's the workers. Things are tough enough, as they say, for folks, that you don't need any of this artificial instigation type of thing. All right, but I'll leave it at that. So you have China here. So China's not, this is a weekly. So China's rolled down. Okay, going back to what I was talking about with Nixon here. Okay, so here is what caught my attention is we had this strawberry moon that arrived with the summer solstice. It was the first time that it happened since 1967. I don't look at the stars, but at one time the humans, full moon, the stars lining up. If there's some repeat with the history, the planets all line up and everyone jumped off a cliff, I'll look at it. I'm assuming it doesn't cause anything, but remember the planet. We can't control the rotation and droughts and floods and things of that nature. So, one of my major concerns too is that when you grow plants and you have seeds, you take those seeds and plant them the following year. But a lot of the seeds that are out here are one shot done. So if we run into any mass famine, whatever seeds people have left, Monsanto type deal, they'll plant them, right? We'll say third world type countries, so they'll plant them and not get anything. So, we're going, in my eyes, we're going down a nasty path here, and we know what the effect will be when with food and everything, But getting back to here, so here was the 1968 election here. Okay, so this is rolling into October, November. This is a weekly. All right, we swung up. Okay, so into December. Okay, they basically hit the high in December here. This is the S&P at 109. Hallelujah, right? That's why we buy stocks for the long haul. Okay, so where was I born? I was born here. So I was born when the S&P was at 90. Okay, so you get a swing up to here to 109 over the next year and a half. Okay, the stock market fell 37%. Okay, so this is now Nixon won his first time around. He's squeaked on by, okay, but in 1972 he won by a landslide, and stocks actually fell all the way down. They took out the lows of the 1970, and I'm going to go and show you that. I think this is this one. Okay, so what do we have going on here? So now this is a daily. The other one was a weekly. So we have the sideways action over the summer. Okay, this is 1968, 69, 1970. Okay, so we come into November, we get the election, and there's a huge swing. Okay, now here is December. It basically goes sideways. This is a daily. Okay, it broke below it. So for those of you who are watching this closely, that 2245, 2250 area, that would be this. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get this, but I'm just looking at previous history. What happened when we put a character in there that kind of was his own, didn't take much for advice type of thing. you know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to ruffle the feathers of the support. Hey, I love our country and everything, but you know, I worry just a little bit here. So, all right. So here was the break. Okay. We slid all the way back down to the previous low area. So if we assume that this is the same thing, okay, because these are the highs. All right. We assume we had the run up and then that's that first pause. Okay. In the S&P, and then we had the second breakout, okay, a secondary breakout. Well, we slid all the way down to where we broke out before, okay. We traded sideways, okay. How far back does this one go? 72, right? Yeah. Okay, so we broke back down here. We came back and retested the underside of it, okay. That'd be a 10% drop. We'll say this is a little bit 10, 12, 15% drop. So we had a 15% drop. Okay, and then into the sell in main, go away. We went and retested the lower side of it. Okay, so the possibility of the same type of thing happening, even if we slice through here, like I said, it's never easy. Okay, and then here's our secondary breakout, and we retested again, and then you had your swoon. Okay. We also, after that, we came off the gold standard. Vietnam cost us a lot of money. We ended up dropping more bombs in 1 year than all of World War II. And it's, yeah. But if people need jobs and stuff, that's where it would lie, right? You get more government spending on military. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but that's how it goes. So I'm going to change this to a weekly and show you what happened afterwards. Okay, so I need to stretch this out to 75. Will that take it? Okay, so here we go. So, all right, so here's 1968. Okay, so this was the election, and then the stock market dropped, 32, dropped by a third. Okay, so that was a bear market. So we had a bear market. It actually made the cover of Life magazine. Life magazine used to be an awesome magazine. Okay, and so we then bounced up through 70, 71, came off the gold standard, so we were able to spend like the Dickens. Okay, then in 73, we ended up with our little oil shock, where you could only buy gas every other day and limit it to we had gas rationing kind of thing. Well, the first time, since World War II. All right, so what I'm pointing out is, you get your third, okay, you get your, Nixon had a landslide election, okay, which to me, I look at the sentiment of that, and that means, that the humans were quite giddy. You basically made it 1 year, and then the stock market fell from 121 down to 60, was cut in half. So over a period of over 6 years, the stock market dropped 30%. Then it went up and took out the highs, okay, because we were able to print because we came off the gold standard. And then we had a reaction to the oil. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen again, but the deal is that we have a character in there that kind of behaves the same way. And it wasn't nationally, it wasn't local, it was international. That was our issues. So I'm just pointing this out going forward. And then after that, this held until we got into Reagan. We ended up with a period under Carter where we had to deal with inflation. And that one, I'm on you, slide over further. I'm on you. Okay, from 75. Okay, 75. Okay. We basically hit 1,000, I think, in the late 60s, and we didn't hit it again until 1982. Okay, so from 1975 to 1982, we basically had a sideways market until we entered the bull market of the 80s. That will be difficult these days because we don't have the baby boomers that we relied on to expand the economy. It's actually the opposite now. We have the baby boomers, quote unquote, being a drag on the economy because of that we will say that they're not producing anymore. They're at the age of Medicare and things of that nature. So, and you also have inflation. You know, when they were socking money away in the early 80s and that, you know, how much was a brand new car was what, $8,000. Okay. So, you know, the costs have increased, like medical costs and things of that nature. Okay. So we're going to, you know, if we're going to spend money on munitions and things, it's like 500 billion. It's a lot of money. The other one is that for advertising in the United States, they spend about the same amount as the military. I was kind of shocked though when I read how little we spend. We'll say 600 billion on military. The top 10 munitions arms dealers, the top 10 combined is 60 billion. So it's somehow the military doesn't seem to pay off. Okay, on the arms side of things, but on the flip side, it gets people back to work making one-use products and that. So, but like I said, I just wanted to point out, you know, what happened after or just prior to the election of Richard Nixon, that the market, you know, basically strolled on into January or strolled on into December, cracked the top here, dropped 10%, went and retested the underside, and then came down. Okay, so it's basically, here was the top area. Okay, this pullback was a little bit deep, and then they moved it up after the election here. Okay, and then it came down and it lost a third. Okay, so now we're talking, if we follow this, we'll say this is 2017, 2018. Okay, so that's strolling into an area where I'm looking for a recession. Okay. All right, so I'll leave this as a separate video of my opinion, and then I'll get started with the other charts.